I'm Hannah Spear. Before we jump in, please like and subscribe. It's really important to help me against the algorithms. It's easy, it's free, so consider doing that. Today, I'm joined by a really special guest. His name is Graham Linehan. He is the most high-profile cancelled person at this moment. He wrote Father Ted, The IT Crowd, Black Books, and he spent the last few years authoring his memoirs, Tough Crowd, which we'll be talking about today, as well as cancel culture and the importance of comedy in our society. Hi, Graham. Thank you so much for being here.
Hello, Hannah. Lovely to be here.
So I read your book, Tough Crowd, which made me laugh and cry and think. Yeah, I laughed so hard that that my husband was was like, "Why are you laughing so hard at another man's joke?" It got a bit uncomfortable.
Oh, that's great. Sorry about that. Please pass
he's
on my
a big
apologies to
fan.
him.
Yeah, quick recap. About 5 years ago, you started tweeting against radical trans activists, standing up for women's rights, women's spaces. How dare you? And defending kids who are exposed to trans surgeries and hormones. And since then, they've just erased you. It's just incredible to watch. He's been harassed and bullied by Pink News and other major news media outlets. They dragged your family through the mud and held your musical Father Ted hostage. And I'm just curious to have your take on, well, what I would think is therapy for the masses, comedy. And what I'm really concerned with, why I'm doing this, is what's going on with people in therapy, our mental health crisis, and what I see, what sort of advice people are getting. And I just wondered what your thoughts are on those parallels. Is there a link? What's going on with people in therapy? Why they spend years and are not getting better? And what's happening to comedy in our culture?
Gosh, that's a very complicated question. Yeah, I do think there's a link between a lot of these things. I think the trans movement, which has taken over therapy, as you know, along with various other fields, is profoundly nihilistic. My friend Richie Tulip, who is a detransitioner, he says that he calls it a death cult. And you see that echoed in a lot of the language they use, like your born name is your dead name, and there's the threats of suicide are prevalent in the movement. So yeah, I do think that there's probably a link from that to a wider feeling of unease. Um, and I know I was just talking to someone this morning about it who was profoundly depressed because he's recently discovered what's going on, and in the UK there was an incident yesterday where Rishi Sunak, the Prime Minister, made a comment about the Labour leader Keir Starmer not knowing what a woman was, and that has been very effectively, certainly in the short term, twisted into uh, uh, Sunak not being appropriately respectful to the parents of a murdered trans-identified teenager who were in the audience, and it's a lie. It's a complete lie. It's what they call the dead cat. They threw a dead cat on the table, and it seems to me that it was a very, very cynical and deliberate move by Labour to put the extremely important question of whether Keir Starmer believes women exist and their rights exist as a result, to put that outside the uh, boundaries of civilized discussion. So they're basically saying that the very question, what is a woman, is in itself transphobic. So transphobic that you can't say it when there's parents of a trans teenager in the audience. And this is absolute nonsense. And of course, it all reflects a world turned upside down. I mean, my one of my reasons for getting into this, it wasn't just what was happening to women, but as a writer, words are very important to me. It's very important they mean things, and there's no there's few words more fundamental than the word woman and mother, and yet we're being told that these words are no longer inclusive. These words are no longer uh, they're trying to place words like woman outside polite discourse. So to anyone who is not as cynical as Keir Starmer or um, the many trans activists he has in his party, this is a profoundly distressing thing. It destabilizes you completely because they are insisting that we say something that we know not to be true. They're insisting that we say that some men are women. They're insisting that we say that the word woman is somehow offensive, um, that mother is somehow offensive. And yeah, I think that these things can make you distraught, and they certainly make comedy harder because every comedy now has to ignore this very real thing that's happening. Just has to pretend it doesn't exist. And so one reason that comedy is useful is that it allows you to process things that otherwise would make you kind of depressed. It puts it through a filter that allows you to deal with it. Almost like a dream, I think. And a lot of the best comedy, I think, comes from the subconscious. The funniest stuff is always the stuff that you don't think about in a logical way. It just kind of it actually lands in your imagination and surprises you so much that you laugh. Um, and yeah, all this is being blocked. All these kind of natural instincts, these natural um, uh, functions of comedy and the imagination and truth are all being manipulated by some of the most cynical people on earth. So I don't know if that answers your question, I hope it comes
Yeah, no,
close.
it's interesting that you say words, because that's what I try to. I mean, in psychotherapy, or in psychiatry, where I work, that's the only thing we have. We don't have X-rays, MRIs. We can't do blood tests. This is what you have. We have words. We put our diagnoses are we just use words, and when that's controlled, that can really, it just inhibits the process, the whole, we are then debilitated. And so that's why I
Yeah.
thought, okay, there's an interesting parallel here.
Well, there's two things we can talk about as well that kind of bear this out. The first is George Orwell in 1984, which famously described what happens um, to humanity when certain words are removed from the dictionary. There's one character he meets in that book whose
Mhm.
job it is to remove certain words, because if you remove the words for certain things, you remove the ability to think
Mhm.
about them. And that's what's going on, I think, with the attempts to remove words like mother and woman. They're trying to make women into such an insubstantial idea that they can't even be discussed, unless, of course, you're including men
Right.
in the
Because that
discussion.
was your initial tweet,
So
wasn't it? Men aren't women, though. Was that the first thing that
yeah,
got you into
yeah.
trouble?
It wasn't the first thing, but it was like the moment Twitter took advantage of to get rid of me. It fell on. I said it on one of these endless trans days of awareness, of which there seems to be one every day, and they used that as the excuse to kick me off. So, and I'm still throttled by Twitter, and so is Kelly J. Keane and many other feminist or feminist allies. Um, and yeah, it's just even Elon Musk doesn't seem to think it's an important enough issue to get our voices back properly
Really?
on
What is
this.
he?
So,
What has he done?
well, he's been great in getting people back, but you can't if whenever you try and protest the shadow banning, like when people search for my name, for instance, all my impersonator accounts come up
Mhm.
first, and no one can
Yeah.
find me. Even people who follow me don't see my tweets. So he just doesn't seem to see it as an issue, you know. And I think that that's something that a lot of conservatives, or what you might call right leaning voices, have in common. They'll certainly pay lip service to this issue, but they don't actually. They're just like the left in that they don't think it's that serious. You know, they don't realize how grave this attack on our language and the women in our lives is. You know.
Being active all the time and incorporating that into your everyday life is easier said than done. For me, it really helped when I found Pitch Fitness Center, a premium wellness gym. It's not just your run-of-the-mill fitness center with white walls and vinyl floor smells like a school gym. This place really gives you that hotel spa feeling. And the best thing as a mom is that it has this kids club, which is amazing. My kids really like to go there. We go every day, even on Sundays. It's so good that even when I'm too lazy to work out, my kids force me to go anyway. And then I go to the wellness area. They even have a steam bath, a biosauna, a Finnish sauna, and a quiet room where you can lie down. I usually fall asleep a little bit, and afterwards I feel so pampered, and my kids have had the time of their lives. So please go and check it out. The link is in the description, and you can give them a promo code. It's What Should I Tell My Daughter, and you'll get a discount. So you mentioned that you need comedy. Can we talk about that and how that has helped you? You speak about that in your book.
I don't know. I realized quite early on I could make people laugh, and I think it was because I read a lot of Woody Allen's essays when I was younger, and he was a very funny essay writer, especially at the time when I was reading it. You know, probably a little dated now, but at the time, the again the surprise of the way he would begin a sentence and the way he would end it, just I just found really delightful. And I just kind of, I don't know, I went through a period where I was doing debates in school, and I would just rip off his material shamelessly, because I was so nervous, and I was so distrustful of myself, that of my own sense of humor, that I would only occasionally use my own jokes. But but that was a good thing to do, I think, because it got me into the rhythms of his of comedy writing. It kind of I guess it's similar to when, you know, an artist might copy an old master to just kind of get a feel for it. Um, and it stuck. It just stuck with me. The ability to make people laugh by arranging words on the page. I just kind of maintained it, you know. And then when we started writing comedy together, me and Arthur, um, yeah, it was just it was pure joy, you know. The feeling of of being productive, of being in a state of flow, and continually laughing was yeah, it was a lovely way to spend my 20s and 30s, you know.
It's
30s, you
nice the
know.
way that you write about, for you, it's about the person laughing. It's about getting the laugh. It's not about what goes on in you. The way that you speak about humor, it's rather a gift, the way you describe it.
Yes,
And you just like you want to
yes,
see the person laugh, which is, I think it's so nice. And then uh, I don't think anyone could read that book and then think that you use humor or comedy as in malicious intent, right? The way that they say about you.
yes. Well, I would say it may have had an element of truth before I was cancelled, because I used to believe that conservatives and people on the right were evil, because I had, without realizing it, absorbed the kind of polarized, catastrophic, catastrophizing language and kind of mores of the American left. I didn't realize it was happening to me, but it was definitely happening to me, and I think that's happened to society as a whole. I think, for instance, the trans issue, you know, if it hadn't originated from America, if it wasn't being pushed by so many American celebrities and stars, if American social media platforms weren't as powerful as they are, I don't think it would have spread to the extent that it has. but yeah, I was kind of influenced by this idea that the right and conservatives were
Mhm.
evil, and and that gave me permission to go after them quite savagely, you know. Um, and I believed what I was being told about various figures, um, people like Ben Shapiro and people like that. I was convinced they were Islamophobes and all this sort of thing, and and then when I was cancelled, uh, I was so routinely lied about, and so completely my reputation completely destroyed by these same people, that I look back at everything and I thought, oh, a lot of what I was believing was
Mhm.
nonsense, you know. And now I'm in a state of weird, like I've literally gone back to, sorry, not literally, but I've gone back to ground zero on a lot of my
Okay.
opinions, because I don't know where I stand on many things, because I do know that uh, the media classes are lying to us
Mhm.
all the time. The Rishi Sunak comment is just one such example. It's been called a transphobic jibe when all he did was ask Starmer a question he refuses to answer, which is, what is a woman? You know, so they're liars. They're just lying to us, and I guess I don't know. It's been an extremely it's not just changed the way I feel about them, but it's changed the way I feel about my entire online life.
Mhm.
Like, I look back at it and I cringe. The first thing I put when I was allowed back on Twitter, the first thing I put in my bio was, I refuse. I stand by. What did I say? I said something like, I reserve the right to disagree with anything I said before 2018. You know, you know, and really, gosh,
Yeah.
you could look through my old tweets and find examples of quite a savage sense of
Mhm.
humor, but no one minded, because I was deploying it against what the British media class had agreed were
Mhm.
the enemy, which was
Yeah.
which was
But if it was
conservatives.
funny, it has to have had a grain of truth in it, no? Even no matter where it was in the political spectrum.
Sure, but maybe it wasn't always funny. Maybe like I've always just felt, I don't know. I mean, I've always, like, when I was growing up, I used to, one of the things that got me depressed when I was a kid, I had to go and see the family doctor about this, was the fact that so many people read the Sun
The what
newspaper.
newspaper?
And it's
The
called the
Sun. Mhm.
Sun. It's a
Yeah.
tabloid newspaper
Mm.
in the UK. And I can't remember how but I would just happen to see it one day, and I was looking through it, and I read a few stories, and it seemed to me that it was written in such a simple style. It was almost like it was for children. And I found it so depressing that it was the most well read newspaper, or the most widely read newspaper in the UK. And I got really depressed. I had to go and see a doctor and say, and I said to him, it just seems to me that, like, how could a newspaper that's written so stupidly, like in such short paragraphs with such basic words, how could that be sell so well? And the doctor said, well, most people read it for the
Okay.
football. And that just
Really?
cheered me up. And I was fine after
So you
that.
never had to go
Yeah.
see one of
Yeah.
my kind. Never did.
No, no, I didn't. My dad was convinced I was only pretending to be depressed to be like
Oh,
Woody
but
Allen,
just pretending. Okay.
So, yeah. But but yeah, and I think basically, uh the I always had a keen dislike of the right, a keen dislike of figures like Rupert
Mm.
Murdoch. Like, I once blew a huge deal to make a version of the IT Crowd in America, because it was for Rupert Murdoch's company. I didn't want to be a hypocrite, and I was constantly talking online about how I didn't want to have anything to do with them. So I blew that one, um, and yeah, that continued, as I say, right up until I was cancelled, and I saw the way that the media in the UK groups together to make certain people untouchable.
Mm.
You know, So
Yeah.
yeah,
So comedy literally got you out of that depression. You said something funny and it
I
made you
guess.
feel better.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. I guess, yeah, yeah. And some of the worst things, I often think of the way Mel Brooks dealt with the Nazis in The Producers. He recognized that once you've been as roundly trounced uh, as the Nazis in history, then they can become history's
Yeah,
punchline, you know, and you can make fun of them all the live long day, and no one will be offended because they were so they were so thoroughly
right.
discredited. Um, uh, and he there's obviously Mel Brooks is Jewish, and the Holocaust was a horrific, wrenching thing for Jewish people. But he was able to turn it into one of the most joyous films ever,
Yeah,
and a
yeah,
musical.
yeah,
That just again processed all that stuff and turned it into something that was the opposite of what it started as.
yeah. And I also thought that because yeah, I'm also Jewish, and I thought that's sort of the limit of comedy for me. I would never be able to laugh at any sort of Holocaust joke, nothing. And then and then I saw a Ricky Gervais joke about like Schindler's List and finding it, and it was just, and despite myself, I just laughed, and I thought, oh, I'm horrible, I'm horrible. I said I thought I'd never laugh at something like this, but the way that he said it, and it's difficult to pinpoint exactly, it was just so outrageous. And do you
Mm.
think that there are any limits to comedy? Or should there be any limits to comedy?
It's an interesting one because it kind of self polices. The limits are basically the more hardcore a joke gets, the more let's say disgusting or transgressive or insulting or offensive a joke gets, the better the joke has to
Hmm.
be. Like if you're going to attack a very very edgy material, then you really have to know what you're doing because nothing casts a chill over an audience like a bad taste joke that
Hmm.
doesn't work. You know, you can just feel you just lose them. And so whenever you do rude jokes or jokes with as I say, taboo subjects or whatever it happens to be, you really have to know what you're doing. And unfortunately, a lot of younger comedians. Well, I'm not sure if this is true anymore because everyone's terrified of being cancelled. But in the early days, a lot of younger comedians, they thought it was kind of a shortcut to a certain kind of notoriety, uh, a certain kind of outlaw status that they could achieve if they covered this sort of material. But a lot of them didn't have the ability to do it without, turning people off. Ricky Gervais is a rare example of someone who
Mm.
can do that. Dave Chappelle is another, but most of them, they'd be better advised to just avoid anything like that because they don't have the skills, you know, to disguise it. A Seinfeld writer said, laughter is a very strong spice, uh, by which he meant you can have an offensive joke, but you have to make
Yeah,
people laugh. If you can do that, you're fine. But if not, you really run the risk of alienating the people you're trying to please.
yeah. Do you think that is it still possible? I mean, you've done some shows in the recent in I mean yeah, you've done some stand-up comedy recently, no? Yeah.
Mm.
Is
Yes.
because you said words are being policed. It's like we're really in the thick of this political correctness. Is it still possible to do comedy? What was your take? Would you dare do a bad taste joke? No.
Oh no, I do lots of bad taste jokes. I mean, I'm fair. As I say, I do them if I think I've got a good a good spin on them. Uh, I don't do many trans jokes because I don't think because the subject is kind of self
Mhm.
parodying. It's a lot of it is so silly that you can't really make fun of it. So my jokes are generally about everyday life, and just things that occur to me when I'm watching Netflix or out on a walk. I'm not really. I've never been one. Father Ted, for instance, we could have done every episode. We could have had loads of jokes about the child abuse scandal
Mhm.
in the Catholic Church, but we never wanted to because I don't know. There were a bunch of reasons, but one of them was that it just wasn't our priest. We didn't want our priest to have anything to do with that. Jack kind
Mhm.
of did, but that became less important as time went on. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of hilarious that I've been cancelled because my tastes have always been to the light and the whimsical and trying to like one of the rules I have a rule, right, but it's not a rule as such, but I think it's nice when you can make this happen, is like you make people think something is dirty and then you reveal that it's actually very
Okay.
innocent. That for me is very, very funny. I saw a video with these two guys, a band called Faux Real, who are just brilliant. And they're two guys, and they're so funny. They're so funny. Like they'll be facing each other, and then one disappears below the camera, and you think, "Uh oh," But then it cuts wide, and he's opening a little jewelry box for him. I love things like that. It's so innocent and sweet, and it's disarming. Um, and yeah, I just that's my favorite thing. I'm not really a fan of pushing the audience's buttons.
Mhm.
I don't want to do that
Yeah.
because again, as I say, you can put them
Mhm.
on edge and people on edge sometimes find it
Yeah,
harder to
yeah.
laugh.
But I think that's why Father Ted and the IT crowd were so popular. It was sort of like family. It was nice. You wanted to follow them. You didn't, you weren't made to feel uncomfortable the entire time. Yeah,
Yes, yes, it's definitely not cringe comedy, which I think got pretty
yeah.
big for a while.
Have you laughed at anything the
Yeah.
past 3 years? Any sitcoms?
Ah, that's a good question. Um, there's been very little. I guess the only thing that sometimes really hits the spot for me is Curb Your Enthusiasm, or
Mm.
Always Sunny in Philadelphia when it's good, South Park when it's good.
I don't find things
Um,
consistently
but I
good,
haven't.
really. I follow something, maybe one episode makes me laugh, the first one, and then it just
That's it. I think there's too many episodes. I think they have runs of something like 25 episodes. So of course some of them aren't going to be very good. But but then they do something like the one where they do a Lord of the Rings parody, which about a pornographic video that they have to destroy. They have to take
what?
this pornographic video and just
What was it?
yeah, it's so it was South Park, and
Oh, South
Butters sees the pornographic video, and turns
yeah.
into Gollum. He becomes kind of obsessed with it and stuff. It's
That's
very,
funny.
very funny. And again, it kind of takes something that starts off in a rude place and turns it into something that's quite innocent. So yeah. Anyway, I love it. Those are the bright spots. But I have to say, I haven't seen very many new comedies. Certainly not in Britain. And I think there's a reason for that. I think people are terrified of saying the wrong thing. I think no one knows what the rules are anymore. So it's very hard to get a comedy out that avoids all the tripwires.
Mhm.
You certainly wouldn't be able to do something like Brass Eye
Yeah.
now. Which was a UK show that was really
Mm.
groundbreaking. I did a lot
And
of work on.
what about this concept of punching up?
Yeah, I don't believe that at all. I think that the punching up is said usually by
Hmm.
bad comedians who do not want to punch anywhere because they're frightened of offending. You know my feeling is that comedy should reflect the world, and that means punching in every direction, up, down, left, right. I always saw The Simpsons like that. The Simpsons was definitely, its writers probably had a left wing lean, but they never let that. in the show was always a hilarious debate between opposing sides. My favorite one was where there was two planes flying next to each other, and they fire a rocket, and the first one plane fires a rocket, and it just turns around and shoots the other plane out of the sky, which explodes both planes. And then it cuts to the two guys parachuting down, and one says to the other, "This is what happens when you take money out of the military and put it in school." And the other one says, "It's a good program, just give it a chance." And then both their parachutes spontaneously catch on fire and they fall to their deaths. To me, that's perfect satire, because it's like it's taking both arguments, it's pitching them against each other, and then it pulls off a punchline that you could never expect. And so, and then also, there's like, for instance, you take Apu in The Simpsons. Apu was never punching down. Apu was the Indian
Yeah.
everyman, in the same way that Homer was the American everyman. And people just decided it was offensive because suddenly it's offensive to make fun of anyone who's not white and male and blah blah blah. So it was actually just a reflection of a certain kind of comedy put through this, um, something that would have been very familiar to Americans at the time, which was people for whom English wasn't their first language running these convenience stores. So the idea that it was, but I think actually there was a bigger problem with The Simpsons, which is just it went
Yeah.
on too long, and after a while, if you're repeating the same accents, it does begin to sound a little bit, you know, suspect.
Yeah. This episode is also sponsored by Violet Nails, where I've been going to for years. It has a bunch of things from eyebrows and massages, mani-pedis, and the result is always so smooth and elegant. And the best thing, I think, is that the treatment never lasts longer than planned, which is important when you have places to go and kids and all of that. You can sit in a massage chair while you get your treatment and listen to music. It's a really good time out. So go to the link below and check it out. So what do you think is going to happen to us as a society when we no longer have comedy, when we don't have things to laugh at together? I heard an interesting take on what happens when we laugh together, that it creates bonds. And so that's the Nazis, they disallowed comedy because they didn't want us to laugh
Did they?
together, and that we would bond across races. And I thought that was
Yeah,
just
yeah, yeah.
so interesting. What do you think about that? And, you know,
Yeah, I think it's great. I mean, I noticed that some of the more popular comedians these days are comedians who are directly addressing racial differences, who are directly addressing the difference between the sexes, or the trans issue, or whatever it happens to be. And, their audiences are full of, their audiences are actually diverse. Like, there's a guy, I'm not sure. He's not my favorite comedian, but I think his name is Andrew
yeah.
Schultz. Um, yeah, Andrew Schultz, and he gets up and he speaks to people in the audience, and he's very very knowledgeable about where people are from. Like, if he finds out that someone is from a different continent, he'll know where, he'll know what the tensions are in the area, and he will use that to make jokes. And you can see that the people he's joking about love it. They love it, because it's coming from a place of
Mhm.
knowledge. It's not coming from a place of prejudice. There are differences between groups of people, between sexes, between races, and he's just pointing them out. And people love it, because they don't want to be lied to. That's the thing they really object to. They don't want to be
Mhm.
lied to. And so it's kind of refreshing. I think that this group, the Andrew Schultz and all the people kind of around Joe Rogan, that lot, they just seem to have a handle on it. And yeah, they kind of give me hope.
Yeah.
They give me hope for the future. Yeah,
What's going
yeah,
on with you
definitely.
at the moment? What do you, yeah.
Well, I'm off to Australia and New Zealand in at the start of March to promote the book and to do a few comedy
Hmm.
writing classes. And then I'm hopefully working on a new project. We've got something on the go. It seems to be going very well. I can't say much about it in case people try to
Mm.
disrupt it. But yeah, it's looking good, and I'm writing comedy for the first time in a long
That's
time.
so good. That's really good. The response
Yeah,
to a tough crowd has been what you hoped. Mm.
yeah, it's been great. Like the people who actually read it seem to like it. So yeah, we're on our third printing, and yeah, just gonna keep going and see if it
Mm.
keeps doing well.
And is anyone speaking up for you yet?
Yeah, various people. I mean, I had a lovely meeting last night with someone who's very close to a big story that's happening soon, and they had an embargo on the story, and they were saying that I was one of the few people they were telling, and that's very flattering, and I'm delighted to be trusted by people who are really doing
Mm.
some good work. But no one in the celebrity world, none of my former friends have ever stood up for me. They just kind of watched me, uh,
Disintegrate. Yeah.
lose everything over the last
Just
5 years. Yeah,
awful.
yeah. They watched my life. Yeah. So it's like, but then I think that is something that apparently you see in every field. Brett Weinstein, when he was being, you know, hounded at Evergreen College, his fellow
That
professors would
yeah.
just look the other way.
Those
Yeah,
those clips
and
are terrifying. Those clips are
sorry, what is?
terrifying. Those clips from
Yes,
Evergreen College, and I mean, what happened to him? Absolutely terrifying.
yes, they really are, and but like the people who are coming after me, they weren't as terrifying as those Evergreen students, but they still managed to silence all my friends. My friends just have never said a word in my defense.
How did you make it
So
through?
it's with difficulty, with new friends who stood up for me. Actually, Stella O'Malley was just a rock for me during some of the worst stuff. She's
Yeah,
a
I'm having
therapist
her
over here.
on later on this month. Yeah.
Yeah, she's probably saved my life a
Mm.
few times. Um, and the whole. I mean, I do say that even though I lost a lot of fair weather friends from the media, I did gain a lot of friends from different walks of life, and so I kind of expanded my what would you call it? I got a kind of my life was beforehand. I only knew
Mm.
people in the media, and now I know no one in the media, but I know all sorts of people outside of it. I know police women and social workers and therapists and lawyers and all sorts of different people. So it's been for as a writer, it's actually been very good because it's kind of widened uh,
The horizon,
my
the
I don't
yeah.
know what
Mm.
my horizons. Yes, yes, and so yeah, I'm hoping that I can now
Yeah.
use all that extra knowledge I have now in writing something
Yeah,
new.
but I mean, the best comedy comes out of tragedy. No, and what I've to is an absolute tragedy. Mm.
Yeah, absolutely. And well, it is. Yeah, and that can be
Mm.
very funny. Like if you really, I mean, we used to when we were writing Father Ted, Arthur and I used to say we'd be writing something, we'd be shaking our heads laughing and we kept saying, "Poor Ted, poor Ted." We were doing
We
it to him. We were doing it to him. But like, even though we were doing it to him, it felt like it was just happening naturally. That he was just very
yeah.
unlucky, and and that really made us laugh. So yeah. So a character who's going through something like what I went through, um, it could be funny if it's done in the right way, definitely. And I think it'll make me feel a lot better if I'm able to turn it into comedy.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm quite worried about what because it doesn't seem to let up. It doesn't seem to be getting better, at least from where I'm sitting, and I just see that, that yeah, people are just getting sicker and sicker, and therapists worse and worse because they are just affirming people's fragility. That's what I
Mm,
protest. That they aren't actually
mhm.
trying to build resilience. They're just sort of, yeah, wrapping people in bubble wrap. There's no better metaphor for
Yeah,
it, and that we're not even getting um, resistance from people who are supposed to say the most outrageous things. People are who like you, who are really supposed to challenge us.
yeah, yeah. It's just an extra the idea that I mean, the idea has taken hold that words are
Hmm.
violence, which is the most absurd saying, and it's leading to, yeah, as you say, an extremely fragile generation who God knows how they'll be able to deal with life when they
They
hit their
don't. They're
forties.
not.
You know,
That's
yeah, yeah,
there aren't enough
I can
psychiatrists in the
imagine.
world.
Really, is it that bad? So you're seeing this kind of reflected now, and people come to
Exactly.
see you, or
That's why I started writing, started doing this, because I saw, we're always sitting in these meetings, therapists, again, psychiatrists, psychologists, students, everyone, and we talk about our patients, we talk about what we do, and I was just sitting there like, you told them what? It was just, and then I just started writing. It's people, this whole self-esteem movement, and they're buying into all this nonsense. And I'm like, you're supposed
yeah,
to be the people who know better. Like, you're supposed to be everyone sitting there, miserable, divorced women, and you're supposed to sort of tell people how to be happy. It was just, and yeah, my worst fear
yeah.
is that my kids will somehow, somewhere down the line get a therapist. That's my worst
That's
fear.
really
So, like, at least I'll be the one to pick them.
yes, 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 absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I remember there was a at my kid's school there was a mental health
Mm,
awareness day,
mm.
and it seems to me that if you want to fuck a kid up, just make sure they're aware of their mental
Yeah.
health. You know.
Yeah, so they're just telling kids to direct more attention and focus inwards, instead of doing
Yes,
be someone to someone, right? Develop an
exactly,
actual
exactly,
identity instead of sitting in a therapy room and talking about identity. That's,
absolutely,
I think, the
absolutely.
problem.
Yeah,
And so,
yeah.
yeah, when I read Tough Crowd, that's really got me thinking about that, because I was, yeah, at one point I was like, okay, you were talking about the audience and how important it is, the audience, and I was like, what is really the difference between sitting alone in an audience with the
Mm,
stand-up comedian
yeah.
and therapy? What do you think?
Right. Right. Well, I don't know. I think, as you say, the shared laughter is a really. I mean, I've always shot in front of an audience. Father Ted, IT Crowd, Black Books, all the people, all the shows that people really love, were all shot in front of an audience. And I think that there is and when I was a kid, I used to go
Mm,
to church, and I rejected that, but I now wonder whether there is some value to every week going somewhere where you meet all your neighbors, and you smile and
mm,
nod at them, and everyone feels a sense of togetherness. I think audiences have that magic, and and laughing together about something is a fantastic thing. I give one example in the book, which was When
mm,
Harry Met Sally, the Nora Ephron film, uh, Rob Reiner, and when we all went to see that in the cinema, we saw it wasn't just their wit and their kind of I don't know their wisdom that you were responding to. It was the wit the audience
mm,
was showing in how they were responding
mm.
to the film, and you suddenly feel less
Yeah,
alone. You know, you feel like you're part of a community, and that's possibly the most dangerous thing that's happened recently. There's been we're being separated from each other by a series of crazy ideas. That comedy, I agree, does something to mend and
mm.
reconnect people, but but we're being blocked because you know a bunch of HR managers have said that certain things are off limits.
Yeah. Yeah, they say that laughter is the best drug, and it does physiologically release dopamine. So it is an actual
Sure.
drug. we forget that. And now there's something about showing
Yeah.
yourself that you're able to laugh at your worst things. That's the yeah.
Yes. Yes. It's so important. And the only comedy that's left is, well, this is a very old reference, but I call it jongleurs comedy. There used to be these comedy clubs all over London and maybe the UK called jongleurs, and they were where stag nights and hen nights went
Mm,
when they were drunk, where you would see comedy that wasn't really um, challenging you in any way. It was just basically, uh, uh, you know, everybody. I don't know. It was like it was very mediocre comedy. It was very mediocre, and that kind of mediocre comedy, it's the only kind of comedy available at the
mm,
moment. You know, because because they've set up these guardrails that give you an electric shock every
hmm,
time you touch them. So you have to stay
mhm,
within. You have to stay within them at
mhm,
all times. And as a result, the only people who are thriving at the moment are the most mediocre, middle of the road comedians you can
yeah.
imagine.
And then what do you think of Hannah Gatsby and her ilk and the late night hosts and
Well, I don't want to speak ill of any comedians, but I'll put it this way: I think woke comedy is a
Mm,
contradiction in terms. And the thing about Hannah Gadsby is she's the kind of person who would use the word cis, and I think as soon as you use words like that, then you kind of remove yourself from humanity, because no one understands what it means. Everyone has to have it explained every time they hear it, and it actually doesn't have a relation to anything that's true in real life. So for me, it's kind of like, I don't know, it
no.
it just
What do you
doesn't
mean
work for
removed
me.
from humanity? Can you go deeper into that?
Well, cis is an academic term invented to maintain the lie that there are two types of women:
Mm,
trans women who are men, and cis women. And it's not something that bears any relation to what we know to be true. It's a lie. And so when people use it and kind of use it as a shorthand for something that actually doesn't exist, because I don't think women are a subcategory of their own sex, then it's just the same as lying to your audience.
yeah.
So
So
yeah.
then you don't get laughter. You get like what do they call it? Clapter. when
Laughter.
because
Yes,
they're
yes,
all just joined, just united in their ideology.
yes. This is the age of clapter. Definitely, definitely.
Okay, that's okay. Good. I mean, thank you so much.
Is that
Yeah,
it?
I
Oh,
would,
oh my
I would
gosh.
just,
Okay.
yeah, I'm trying to keep it short and sweet for the, I tailor it to women. So we don't do this
Okay.
3-hour Joe Rogan. We don't have that much time. You know, I'm a stay-at-home
You're
mom and I
right.
just hear my kids, they're going, ah.
That is quite a masculine thing to do a 3 hour podcast.
Yeah,
That's
like
so
we don't
true.
have that kind of
That's so
time. But yeah, so
absolutely,
that's like
absolutely.
next up we're doing like diet drugs and then you and then
Yes.
like so yeah, that's what I'm trying to do. I'm just trying to get the mothers on board because we're the ones who spend the majority time with the kids. We can build
Yeah.
resilience and expose them to things.
Yeah. And of course, that's a wonderful way to tap into comedy, is just in terms of what kids say and what kids do. I saw a hilarious video just yesterday where a woman from Ireland says to her kid, "I'm going to leave you in the bathroom, and you can say any rude word that you want when I leave, right?" And she leaves the camera on in the bathroom, and this lovely, cute, adorable little toddler girl, and the door closes. She just starts going, "Fuck, fuck." It's the funniest thing. And then she starts going, "Fuck's sake, fuck's sake." It's genuinely hilarious. And that's the kind of comedy I definitely want to
Yeah,
pursue.
it's really funny.
It's really funny. I'll try and find it and
Yes,
send it to
please.
you.
That's oh God, yeah. My kids, because they speak Norwegian with me and then English with my husband, and some words are, but and then German. in school,
Yeah,
and those sort of because
yeah, yeah, yeah.
shit in Norwegian just means dirt, like mud. Welcome to
And
season
so they'd be like,
2,
right,
Psychobabble.
right.
I'm
And
Hannah
those are just
Spear, and today
hilarious.
I'm
And
joined
just
by
but
Graham
it's
Linehan, maybe
important to,
the
It's
most
all lovely, and it's part
high-profile,
of life,
cancelled
and
person
that's
in our
what we have to
time.
get back to,
He
because
is
comedy
one of the
that's
most
reflects life,
innovative,
you know.
I
creative
do hope
comedy
that there's
writers.
light at the end of the
He
tunnel,
wrote
that we're
Father
sort of
Ted.
making
He
it
wrote
out.
The IT Crowd, which even our audience in
You think
Norway,
so?
Switzerland will
Think
know
so.
about. That's
Is
why I
there
mentioned
hope?
those
Yeah,
two.
because
But
someone
also
told me
others. So
a
I'm so
time of
happy to be
madness
speaking to you
usually
today. Hi,
lasts for
Graham.
about 5 years.
Okay.
So I think that's certainly what we've been going through, and I think hopefully some of the more untenable aspects of this are becoming clearer to people. You know, sport, for instance, is becoming harder and harder to ignore. So, and you know, the puberty blockers thing, that's going to blow up soon. So it's all. I think you never know. I think it's getting a little
Okay.
bit better.
From
maybe.
your lips to God's ears. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Hopefully.
But thank you so much. I really enjoyed this. I feel a bit lighter
Good,
at
thank
heart,
you.
I have to say. And yeah,
Oh, good.
you too.
Excellent. Well,
And I
that's
wish
great.
you all the
You're
best
supposed
in
to do
your
that for me.
endeavors.
Thank you. Thank you. And if you ever want to talk again,
I
just let
really
me
want
know.
that.
And
Your next book.
No, I'd be happy to. Lovely to speak to you,
Bye.
Hannah. Bye bye.